Okay, I hope everyone is having a wonderful Christmas break. And I have prepared some of these tutorials so that you can keep your skills with fractions fresh and ready to go when we come back to school. So this first tutorial is going to take a look at least common multiple. At the end of the tutorial, there is a Google form that I have set up as what I call an instant reinforcement quiz or an instant feedback quiz. And I'll explain a little bit more about that after we go through this review of finding least common multiple. The other tutorials will also be set up the same way. There'll be the actual tutorial, and then there will be a Google form that is an instant feedback quiz where you can check and see how you're doing, and if you need more help, it directs you back to the tutorial. So here we go. Least common multiple. Remember, there's two ways to find the least common multiple. The first one is to write out the multiples of each number. Well, that's easy if your numbers are smaller, but when we start getting into some larger numbers, writing out the multiples may not be the best option. The second way is finding the prime factor each number, or finding prime factorization of each number to find the least common multiple. So I've got three examples here that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to use both methods, writing the multiples out and then finding the prime factors. So first one we're going to look at is 8 and 40. Ready? And let's go. So we're going to write out the multiples for each number, and again we've got 8 and 40. So writing out the multiples, you're going to think of your 8 table. 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3 is 24, and you're going to write the numbers out. So why don't you pause the video here, get some paper and pencil, and write out the multiples of 8 and take it out to about 8 times 6, so you don't have to write all the way out to 8 times 12. And then write the multiples of 40. And if you're looking at that and thinking, oh my God, I don't know the multiples of 40, it's the same thing as the multiples of 4, but you put a 0 at the end. Okay? So pause the video here, find the multiples, and when you've got the multiples for 8 and 40, click back on and we're going to see how you did. Okay? So here we go. This is what you should have for the multiples of 8. Again, you don't have to write 8 times 1, but you write the product. So 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. 40s, remember I said that's the same thing as writing the multiples of 4. So you've got 40, 80, 120, 160, 200, 240. And now you want to find the first multiple that each number shares. So I'm going to use a red circle here for 40. And 40 times 1 is 40. So that is the least common multiple. Remember, least means the smallest. So 40 is the first, it's the smallest multiple that they share. They would share more, but we want the first one. Now I want to take a look at prime factoring for each number. And remember, when you're prime factoring, you're pulling out the prime factors. For these two numbers here, I'm going to use factor trees. And you think, well, how can I get 8? What two numbers can I multiply to get 8? Well, that would be 2 times 4. 2 is a prime number, so it has a circle around it. 4 is not prime. You get 4 by multiplying 2 times 2. So your prime factors for 8 are 2 times 2 times 2. Well, let's think, how could you get 40? Well, 2 times 20 would give me 40. And that's exactly how I started here. You could have started any other way. You could have done 8 times 5. You could have done 4 times 10. It doesn't make any difference. You want the numbers that are going to equal 40. I always start with the smallest prime number because it just makes it that much easier when you've got your primes listed, but you don't have to. So 2 times 20 is 40. 20 is 4 times 5. 2 is prime, 5 is prime, 4 is not. 4 is 2 times 2. So I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 for my prime numbers. After you get the prime factors, you then list the prime factors that you have for 8, and you list the prime factors that you have for 40. Now, when I multiply these together, I don't want to multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, because that's not going to give me the least common multiple. It will give me a common multiple, but not the least one. So what I'm doing now is I'm circling any prime factors that are shared by these numbers, because I don't want to count them more than once. If they each share the same factor, I'm only going to count that factor one time. So I'm going to count this as 1, 2. I'm going to count this as another 2, and I'm going to count this as another 2. Not as a total of 6, but as a total of 3, because both 8 and 40 share this 2. So I'm only going to count it once. 8 and 40 also share another 2. I'm only going to count it one time. And 8 and 40 share another 2, but I'm only going to count that as another 2. So when I multiply my factors together, I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. When I multiply these together, the least common multiple is 40. So I should get the same answer when I prime factor as when I write out the multiples. You should not get different answers, okay? So the least common multiple for 8 and 40 is 40. Nice. Now let's go on to the next one. Oops. Cover those up. Writing out the multiples of each number, and I'm writing out the multiples for 12 and 45. And again, I want you to do the same thing. On your paper, I want you to write out the multiples of 12. 12 times 1, 12 times 2, 12 times 3, and do the same thing for 45. Write out the multiples that you have for 45. Take it out about 6 or 7 places. See if you have a multiple that they both share. And pause the video here after you write them out. Click back on, and we'll see how you did. Okay, back again. Here we go. There's my multiples of 12, and I've taken it out quite a few places. So that's kind of an indication that they're not going to have a multiple that's really close to or within the first 6 multiples that you're writing out. And here's my multiples of 45. Okay, so now I'm looking at my numbers, and I'm looking at 12, 24, 36, nothing here, nothing here. I'm looking at 45, 90, 135. Well, 45 times 4 is 180, and there's 180 here. So that is my least common multiple for 12 and 45, 180. Sometimes if you start with your larger number and write it out 5 or 6 or 7 places and then take a look at your smaller number, you find it a little sooner, okay? Because you can see you really had to take this out 15 places to find the common multiple for 12 and 45. So now let's take a look at prime factoring. Well, I'm going to prime factor 12, I'm going to prime factor 45. The first multiple, or this first prime number that goes into 12 is 2. The first prime number that goes into 45 is 3. So I'm going to have you pause the video here and go ahead and prime factor these 2 numbers and then click back in. Okay, so we into 12 6 times. Prime number, smallest prime number is 2 again. 2 goes into 6 3 times. Smallest prime number now is 3. 3 goes into 3 1 time. And remember, when you get the 1, that's it, you're done. So 3 goes into 45, well, that would be 15 times. 3 goes into 15, and that would be 5 times. 5 goes into 5, and there you've got your 1. Just like we did last time, you're going to line up your factors of 12 and 45. And I've circled the 2 3s here. Remember, you're going to count this as 1 3. So you're going to multiply 2 times 2 times 3. This 3, it's by itself. You're going to include this, times 3 times 5. And when you multiply these out, you also get 180. Okay, on to our last one. And write out the multiples of the numbers 15 and 120. And this time, why don't you try writing out the multiples of 120 first, and then write out the multiples of 15. Okay? Stop the video here and go ahead and write out the multiples of 120 and 15, and then click back in when you're done. Okay? So, for 120, and again, this is the same thing as multiplying by 12 and then add a 0. 120, 240, 360, 480, 600. Writing out the multiples of 15, well, I've got 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, nothing yet. 91, look at here, 120. So this has a 120. And 120 times 1 is 120. So that's your least common multiple. Now, prime factoring these numbers. 3 is the smallest prime number to go into 15. 5 will also go in, so if you're thinking, what about 5? It goes in, but it's not the smallest. Okay? Remember, the reason that I picked the smallest is when you're done, you have all of your numbers in order from least to greatest also. So it just saves you a step. So 3 goes into 15 5 times, 5 goes into 5 1 time. 2 goes into 120. 2 is the smallest prime number to go into 120. And 2 goes into 120 60 times. 2 goes into 60 30 times. 2 goes into 30. Notice here you could have used a 3, but if I keep with a 2, then my next number is 3 goes into 15 5 times, and my prime factors are all in order from least to greatest. So when I line them up here, I don't have to remember to put them in order, they're already in order. And 15 and 120 share a 3. So now you're going to multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. Actually, they share a 5 too. I should have had a circle around the 5s. They share a 5. And when you multiply all those together, your answer is 120. Okay, so there is the tutorial for finding least common multiple. Now, when you